Buddy, it's time again for another episode of Veteran Force, turning our veterans into a powerful economic force. Hosted by the Force himself, the one and only Force of Nature, Christopher the Force Penton.
How you doing out there, veterans? Hey, we're coming back to you from Irvine. This is the show that talk about veteran issues, and we come up with solutions. We're not gonna just talk and then get off. So we're gonna talk about veteran issues. We're gonna talk about deck plate issues. We're gonna talk about stuff that I know what your concerns are because I'm a veteran. So we're gonna talk about those things. And today we have a special guest. I have my buddy Tyrone, Mr. Tyrone French. Now let me give you a little history about Mr. Tyrone French. Now Tyrone French and I went to boot camp together. Yeah, that boot camp in September the 2nd, 1981. Matter of fact, he was the RCPO. He was the leader of the company 211. So he was the leader, and I was a squad leader. And then eventually, he became a squad leader, and we are the one, the two that took company 211. No bones about it. Took it from last to first. Matter of fact, these are two veterans. One that made a left turn out the military. He did his time and he went on in the civilian world. And one that made a right turn that stayed in the military the whole 30 years. So let me introduce Mr. Tyrone French. Tell him who you are, baby.
Hey, Master Chief, how you doing today, buddy?
I am great.
It's always good to hear your voice, and I call you Penton. I've been calling you Penton from day one, ever since September 1981. And you always had a smile on your face. You always made people laugh. And I just knew you had a very successful career ahead of you, and to see how everything manifested and how we're just full circle to whereas we're both veterans and we have a heart for veterans, and we're kind of working on the same issues as far as trying to improve the lives of these veterans. To me, it's just it's a dream come true, man. It's a dream come true.
Yeah.
I appreciate you.
And basically what we're going to do is we want to teach the veterans how to build wealth. Because I'm going to tell you, the veterans, the military is the only organization that get paid religiously twice a month. Twice a month. So we need to take that twice a month and make it work for you and not against you. So that's what it's all about. We're going to try to help you build wealth. So that's what I got Mr. French on board. And they're like he called me Penton, I called him French. Because when I stand around, somebody call me by my first name, I start looking around for who is Christopher. I don't even know who that guy is. My name is Penton or Force if you're nasty. That part.
Hey, I tell you what though, when I even in basic training, we're sitting down in boot camp. I still have pictures today where it was a totally different experience because we would get paid and we cash our paychecks, and I would sit down and I had money just thrown out in front of me and checks that I hadn't even cashed, and I didn't have a term for it, but the term is discretionary income. At that point in basic training, we had discretionary income that we could use at our discretion. And then once we got out of basic training, we went back to the same old habits that we had prior to going into boot camp and started spending all the money. And again, started living paycheck to paycheck because we didn't have the financial training that we needed to establish ourselves financially. And imagine this, Penn. Imagine if we had some type of training or some kind of PQS or some kind of course that taught us at the very minimum we needed to save 10% of our income. And back then, it probably been like a savings bond or something. But today, when you're looking at veterans and telling them, hey, you need to save at least 10% of your income, now we can talk about things like precious metals, things that maintain their value over a long period of time. Because again, once people get to that, they're in that groove to whereas they see themselves succeeding financially, their careers are growing, chances are they're going to stay in the military maybe 20 or 30 years. And at the end of that 20 and 30 year stint, now they've accumulated all this wealth, all these resources, these income producing assets that they can really literally transition to the next stage of their life. So I'm excited about this show.
If you ask me what was my very successful time in the military, I would say as a command master chief, I did 6 tours as a command master chief. If you ask me what was my biggest failure, I would say a command master chief because I never took the time out to talk to sailors about the financial side of the house because I just didn't know it. And it was all about the mission.
But think about this, man. You can't know what you don't know.
Right.
But your heart was for your sailors, and it was in the right place. But that's why I was saying, as far as I would love to be able to institute a program to whereas now these master chiefs have the information, they have the knowledge, and all of a sudden they get the curricula to whereas they can literally lead by example. And let me give you a point or example. When I was coming up in the military and I was advancing through the ranks, we didn't have a course that we had to go through based on finance. Now imagine that being a leader in the military, that you could not advance to the next rank unless you had some type of financial training that you can pass down to your sailors, to your airmen, to your Marines, to your soldiers.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, that makes a lot of sense because what happened is, from the Navy perspective, probably about 10, 15, 20 years ago in the military, we made a left turn. We started being more, the chief petty officer started being more like an officer. They wanted to be viewed as somebody in the wardroom, and we lost that leadership perspective. We could have put the courses together ourselves and talked about the finances, but we were so busy trying to get associate degrees and bachelor degrees for advancement, and we left the sailors and we left the families on the wayside. So we could reach back and grab them, but that's my biggest failure as far as a command master chief, that I didn't put enough emphasis on the financial side of the house.
Can I jump in and join this conversation for 1 second here, because I got some questions here. Here I am, the announcer, putting the backroom producer of this show, and I got 2 guys telling me that the military doesn't prepare people for when they leave. Is that real?
That's
financially.
Yeah.
Just financially.
And so we have veterans come in all the time, veterans groups that say veterans end up homeless, veterans end up broke, veterans end up not being able to translate what they did in the service into a job on the outside. Is that some of the stuff we're going to talk about?
Well, they don't necessarily end up homeless per se. They was homeless before they joined the military, because you got to realize the majority of them come out right out of high school and go into the military, which means that they mother and they father broke their plate at home and moved their mattress out. So they left home without a place to go back. So what we didn't do was build them a house. I mean, a foundation to go back to.
And see, Paul, again, we're insiders, so we're giving you the inside scoop on the inside track.
Right.
But like going to the military during the holiday period, like let's say if it's Thanksgiving or Christmas, and they'll, especially in the Army, they will allow you, if you're in basic training, they will allow you to leave and go back and spend that holiday period with your family.
Okay.
But a lot of the soldiers had to stay on the base because they didn't have a home to go to.
Wow.
Right. They didn't have family to go to.
The military is their home now.
Right.
The military was their home now. And so as a kid, 17, 18, 19-year-old, you look at that and you see some of the guys, not leaving the base, not, during those period of time, not leaving. And it's like, wow, why wouldn't they want to go home? But a lot of times these kids don't want you to know their story. Yeah. They don't want you to know their abuses that they, put up when they were at home. So they would rather stay where they are.
So you 2 points there. So then when they finally leave that service, 30 years, 3 years, whatever, I don't know what the minimum
4 years.
4 years sign. Yeah. Okay. So after their first tour, if they don't come back and sign up again, or if they do, at some point, they're probably going to leave. They're going to retire or they're going to leave. And at that point, then in a sense, they are all homeless because the only home they knew was the military.
And when you leave at your place of origin.
Right.
So if your place of origin, meaning that let's say if you went to the military in California. Yeah. And you went and you were all over the world, and let's say you ended up in Tokyo. Okay. Serving in Tokyo. And now it's time for you to transition out of the military, they're going to send you back to California.
Yeah.
And you haven't been there in 4 years or 40 years.
Or whatever,
yeah.
whatever the time frame. And again, when you left California, you were probably homeless.
Right.
Wow.
So
wow.
That's where they put you. So here's the thing. My place of origin was California. But because I was an avionics technician in the Navy and I was quality assurance qualified, I was quality assurance based on an inspector in the military.
Right.
So when I got out and I transitioned and started working for McDonnell Douglas, I had the criteria that they were looking for.
You had a job category you could fit in.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. But if you're a missile technician or something or whatever, yeah, I don't know where you go.
But my point is, when I first went into the military, I was non-designated. I didn't have a job. And so I had to strike. I had to figure out what I wanted to do.
Right.
And just in talking to other senior enlisted and talking to the technical representatives, that's when I kind of put two and two together and realized, okay, this is what I want to do. But a lot of veterans don't have that same opportunity. They don't have it.
So here's the question I have for both of you. We live in a world where we honor our veterans every time we see somebody. I thank you for both of your service. I was not a veteran. My father was a veteran. And this isn't the 60s where we, don't want to hear about the veterans. This is a different era. We publicly proclaim we honor the veterans. Every politician, every person that meets you honors the veterans, mostly once or twice a year. The rest of the time, we don't think about you guys. We think, hey, you've succeeded in that. Somebody's taking care of you. Somebody's taking care of this transition. You're saying that's not true.
Well,
Master Chief, jump in there because you're the best one to answer this question.
I want to have a country where you don't recognize me at all. The 360, because what you do, don't give me anything 3 days a year. Give me what I deserve. Pay me for what I'm worth, and I can go to Denny's and eat whenever I want to eat. Yes. Because what they don't realize is they give us something on Veteran Day, but I was hungry the day before Veteran Day, and I'll be hungry the day after Veteran Day.
Yeah.
Yes.
So don't give me a Whopper.
Yes. And, sometimes people come up to me and they find I'm a veteran. They say, thank you for your service. And again, these were taxpayer dollars that I was getting paid with.
Right.
And I would have to say, thank you, because these were,
you were
it
paying
was a
me.
pleasure.
Yeah.
Right.
Sometimes I would pinch myself, Paul. It's like, they're literally paying me to do this. I'm in some of the most beautiful parts of the world. And I'm working for my government. I'm working on an aircraft. And sometimes, again, I just had to stop and pinch even if I was working on an aircraft carrier, the adrenaline rush, the confidence, the overcoming, the fear.
Yeah.
I could feel the confidence. I could feel the assuredness that was developed in me. And again, I wouldn't have gotten that same experience as a civilian. It just wouldn't happen.
So here's what intrigued me about this show. We tend to think of veterans as a broken group of people. They're wounded warriors, and indeed some are, and that's a different show. We're talking about, I guess it would be the vast majority who don't come out visibly wounded or psychologically wounded, but who come out homeless, who come out
ill prepared
and end up in bankruptcy, in distress, in need, underperforming. And yet this is a force of people, men and women, kids in many cases, that we took and molded into the most powerful force the world has ever seen.
Yes.
Why can't we take that same potential, these people who have achieved, who've been trained, who've performed day after day under the most extreme circumstances, and use that resource in a positive, create a veteran force? You would think veterans would be the most powerful force in the nation.
Because we only recognize them 3-4 times a year. I mean, we got to get away from recognizing each other 4 times a year. I hate when somebody come up to me and say, thank you for your service. But then 15 minutes before that, they walk right by me and didn't even pay attention to. I mean, thank everybody for their service, whether you went in the military or not. Whether you in the military, you're still providing a service to this country. You're not a strain on the legal system.
Exactly.
You're not a strain. So we should get away. I don't own Veteran Day. Just because I was a veteran. I don't own Veteran Day. We all own Veteran Day because we all have family.
Right.
And then your family becomes, when you go to boot camp, you get 100 people that you go to boot camp with. So whatever you had at home means nothing to you for the next 8 weeks, because you need the people standing next to you to grind and get through those 8 weeks. And then
Yeah,
you
you're
become
relying
family.
on them,
That
right.
becomes your family. As a
Yes.
matter of fact, you spend more time with them than you
Yes.
did with your family for the 18 years, because
Exactly.
you with them 24 hours a day for 8 weeks.
And relying on
Exactly.
them
And relying on
7
them.
days a week. Yes. 24/7.
So can we get out of this notion that veterans are a spent force, a broken force, and see them as a potential positive economic force? And then I know Tyrone, where he's going on all this, it isn't just what we can do for them, it's teaching them to do for themselves, right?
Well,
Exactly.
We teach them how to do for themselves. We just don't emphasize it when they come out. Even if a person did nothing for 4 years, they was at work for 4 years. They was reliable for 4 years.
Every day,
To
yeah.
go to work. That should account for something. Just because somebody went to a college and they dropped out for a semester and they went back the next semester, we give them more credence.
And skipped
than
classes
then we
and-
do a
and
military
partied
guy
and,
that showed up for 4 years. I don't think that's right.
Yeah. So
But this is, to me, this is the beginning, fellas. This is the
I agree.
beginning as
Right.
far as changing that mindset,
Change that
or
mindset.
changing that attitude towards,
that
these
perception,
warriors.
that way we view them and that way they view themselves.
It's a perception.
Yes,
so
right.
this show is going to help to change that perception.
I think so.
Because again, it's not from the outside in; it's from the inside out.
From inside out.
So again, and I'll say, I'll challenge that a little bit. We all want to have programs for veterans, trainings for veterans. We want to assist them on the way out the door. I hear too many people say, all they did is hand me a few pamphlets and say good luck, because now I'm not part of the mission anymore here. The military is focused on the immediate mission, not your future success, your current success.
And the reason behind that is the mission, your 4 years may be up while you're on deployment. Your 4 years don't necessarily bring you back home and get a nice transition out of the military.
Right.
You get out wherever you're at, depending on your contract with the military. So we need to go ahead and recognize that we use a lot of old stuff, a lot of pamphlets that was around way back in the day.
Right.
Sailors don't want to read pamphlets on the way out. They've already read manuals their whole career.
Yeah.
They want to be led. You got to take them by the hand and introduce them to the world they're getting ready to go to now.
Yeah, just as you introduced
Yes,
them to
you
the world they
introduce them
came.
to the
Yeah,
military. Exactly.
right.
And you have to break it down in baby steps.
Baby
Not-
steps.
not- and again, that's not an insult. That's not derogatory.
It's how you teach anything,
Make
yeah.
it simple.
How
Break
you
it
ride a
down
bike,
in small bite-sized pieces, to whereas they can digest it. They have time to understand it, and at the same time, they have time to really appreciate it. And I tell you what, there was a story Penn used to always, and I didn't realize this till later on in life, but in the company, we all had to go to the chow hall, which was the restaurant,
Right.
a cafeteria. And in this cafeteria, man, they got any kind of food that you can think of.
I'll bet.
Mean, we were fed extremely well in San Diego. But the thing is, in a company, you line up from the tallest guys to the smallest,
Okay.
or to the shortest. And I never realized why Penn had to eat so fast, because when the larger guys got in there, they could kind of relax and take their time. Whereas the smaller guys, they had to eat fast, because guess what? We only had a certain amount of time to eat.
Hey, and then when the last man sat down, the first man stood up. So you eating a lot of bread and peanut butter and jelly. See, French is tall, so then he was the RCPO, so he always ate what he wanted to eat. And because I was who I was the short. This was probably only one guy in the company that was shorter than me, and I used to always say, "At least I ate more than you."
Hey, but my point is this: the guys in the back end, they didn't have time to appreciate and digest their food the same way as the guys in the front.
Eating it too fast.
Eating it too fast.
You had to eat it fast.
So we should have that same philosophy as far as looking at these veterans, and give them time that they can get this information and have time to digest it so they can appreciate it and apply it.
Well, I hope that same philosophy goes to our listeners, whether you're in the force, out of the force, or want to be part of the force, we want to take time to talk about this. Isn't a once and done lesson. This isn't a once and done conversation. As I see this show unfolding, Christopher Penton, the Force, is going to bring in the force of 30 years of being a Master Chief. You were a Force Master Chief Petty Officer, right?
I was in the Navy for 30 years, and 14 and a half years was as a Master Chief. I was as a Command Master Chief. I tell you what, if anybody got a story better than that, then hey, drop it, drop it on the table, baby, because I tell you, nobody have ever done that. But what is leadership if you don't exert your leadership
and
use it in a positive? I use it in a positive form, but it's just the people that know me. That's why I said, well, let me take this to the podcast. Let me get somebody on like French, so we can just go ahead and attack the world together and let them know that veterans should not be looked at as a sad situation.
Right.
We should be looked at as what you going to add to it to make it a meal.
It isn't
exactly.
I keep and maybe this is a bad analogy, but it's not a spent force.
It's not.
It's a potential force.
It's a force, and you can put whatever you want to on the front end of it.
Exactly.
Exactly. Hey, you know what? I want to jump in here, and anybody that's listening to this podcast today, I'm going to give you some homework.
Okay.
There's something that I want you to do.
Good, because I want to wrap this up and to get some tangible steps as we go start the conversation today.
Well, the first thing I want to do is give you that military experience. And PBS did a documentary. It's a 10 episode documentary. It was called Carrier.
Okay.
I highly recommend you to Google this or go to YouTube,
Public Broadcasting or PBS.org or whatever.
Go to Amazon or whatever. But get this documentary, and it's going to give you an inside track of what we're talking about as far as the military. Now, you're not going to know everything, but in my opinion, it's one of the best documentaries about
a world most of
life
us have never seen.
that you've never seen before. And again, the reason I say Carrier is because during this particular episode, Master Chief Penton was the Command Master Chief of the USS Nimitz.
The whole aircraft carrier.
The entire aircraft carrier, over 5,000 people.
And then eventually
and the entire battle group,
right,
by the way.
All these other ships that support
all
it.
the other ships associated with that group.
And what is a Master Chief Petty Officer doing? I know we're going to go through this a couple of times here for those that are uninitiated. What was your job? You're the highest ranking enlisted man?
I do everything to make sure that ship pulls out on time and pull back in with 4,500 sailors on board.
When the officers say, is this force ready to move? You say, yes, sir.
The officers don't say nothing. They just get out of my way. That's what they do.
And your job is what? To train and prepare and to oversee the force of people there.
And their families.
Yes, and that's another crucial point.
That's right.
Because it's not just the military person, the active duty military that's serving. It's the entire family that's serving.
That's why we call it a force. It's the force. When we say force, we're not talking about who wear the uniform. We're talking about who support the uniform.
Exactly.
Because every force needs a support force.
And every family should consider themselves a force. Whether you're Smith, say your last name is Smith, you're a Smith force. Yeah. Everybody in that family got to be pulling in the same direction. That's basically what we're talking about. Way too often, like French was saying, way too often we get caught up in, I didn't get my legs blown off, so I didn't contribute as much as I supposed to the military. We got those people gonna always be taken care of. They call wounded sailors. They call wounded warriors. They always gonna be taken care of. But we need to come into the mindset that anybody that put a uniform on, they basically said, I'm willing to die for this country.
You took that oath to protect and defend the
protect
United
and
States
serve.
And whether they realize it or not,
your
family's riding along too. Your kids, your wife, your spouse, your partners, everybody here is
your kids, generation to come.
Yeah. All right. So there's a force waiting to awaken, and first we have to recognize the problem. Then we have to start bringing people out to understand the problem. And you've got all sorts of high-level connections in the military or outside the military, veterans group stuff. People have been there, tell these stories. I know that's going to be part of it. And then slowly but surely we're going to start pointing the way forward. Because as you said, it's not just enough to make people aware of the problem. We got to solve the problem.
Got to solve the
Paul,
problem.
And here's the thing. And Penn, I know this is your show, but
this is our show.
Activated. I'm activated as far as, and I'm inspired by this. First thing we have to do though is we got to set the table.
Yes.
I
Okay.
want you to imagine just somebody, they took hours and hours preparing this meal, but there was no china on the table.
Right.
There was
No.
no silverware. And so you're not going to take that meal and just dump it on the table and tell people to go for it. You got to set it first. So that's the first thing we have to do is we got to set the table.
Right.
And
Well,
it's
that's what we're
based on
doing
the
today.
perception.
Right.
And
That's what we're doing.
in the next few shows.
And
yeah,
like
right.
French said, whether you eat or not is not my concern. But long as I know the food was properly prepared and you had the proper utensils to eat that food,
Exactly.
my job is done.
Exactly.
If I tell you
Yes.
a puppy dog can pull a freight train, don't ask how. Just hook him up, baby, because we moving.
Well, that's the force.
Absolutely.
That's the force that you guys have. It's this idea of, what, get up. How do you always say, get up or get out of the way? Or
No,
something?
you either lead, be led, or just simply get out the way.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, we're going to lead people to a new understanding. We're going to show them how we're going to awaken this force. That's the only way I can say it. There's a force ready to be awakened. Too often we think of it as a spent force, a forgotten force, a wounded force, a damaged force, a force that has fizzled and fallen apart. But if we can pull this group of veterans back together and get them to rise up, what power and potential there is for them and the country and all of us here.
Hey,
Yeah.
French, we either gonna run through you or over you. We're not gonna
We're not gonna stop.
We're not gonna stop. I'm just letting you know. You might as well hook it. Hey, you can hook it up to the front end of the train or the back end. All depends on how you want to ride, baby. We gonna do what we gotta do because we've been sitting on this for a long time,
Yeah,
and it's
you guys have
time
been
to
talking
move
about this.
forward.
All right. So, is there a place to go to yet? Do we have a website ready, or is that still to come here? We need to create a force, a place where they can coalesce.
Communication force. Right.
Yeah.
We're working on all that. We're gonna be coming to you in bits and pieces. Cause like French said, we don't want to overload you.
Right.
But hey, you got to tune in every couple of weeks. Cause we're gonna take you to the next level. And
Good
we
deal.
always gonna reach back. Cause if you stand on this is all I gotta say on the way out. If you are standing on the mountaintop and you by yourself, you did it wrong, baby. You did it wrong. I don't care how rich you are, you did it wrong.
You did it
Yes.
wrong.
Because no one man is an island, and no island is a man.
And
so let's
no-
go ahead and get busy.
And no one person is a force.
Oh,
A force implies.
no. It could be because I am a sword, baby.
Well, you may be
Paul, you got him going.
Hey,
now.
you got me going now.
Well, thank you. We're not going to force you to listen, but we're going to provide you a force to come together, a magnet to draw everybody together here. I look forward to riding along with you guys and learning about the potential power of veterans in this country. Thanks for stepping up, and I look forward to riding along and hearing
Hey,
more.
thanks,
of it.
French. Hey, thanks, French. Hey, a friendship over 40 years. This is the way you do it, baby. We're
Yes, sir.
forced to be reckoned with, baby. Do
Yes,
that.
sir. Company 211.
Come 211. That part.
Stand up and be accounted for. Here we go. Well, there you have it. A different narrative than is normally presented. There is a force ready to be awakened. Veterans, turning veterans into a powerful economic force. Tune in each and every show as we talk about the need, the power, and the potential of this force. Right here in Orange County's only community radio station.